daily lives that will change history. 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 That will be the most beautiful day.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for stopping by tonight for Ukraine War Report. Good morning to some of you. Good evening to some others. Again, welcome, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to stop by and get filled in on what's been going on in the war in Ukraine. We are now on day 138. As we didn't have any reports last week, we're going to be getting you guys all caught up on what's been going on over the course about not only the past 24 hours or so. We'll be touching on the latest and greatest, but we'll also be going back into the past about 7 days of content. We'll be covering all of the main kind of the main headlines to get everybody up to speed. Big shout-outs tonight to some of our familiar faces we have in the live chat tuning in tonight. LD429, thank you so much for stopping by. Miss Fishy, thank you so much for stopping by. Hugo, Hammer Jam, OG Smiley69, Preston, Michelle Welch, Matt, Miss Tiger Eye, thank you guys, to everybody. Again, thank you guys for taking some time out of your day to spend an hour or two getting caught up on what's been going on in Ukraine. On the ground in Ukraine there as this war continues to drag on here. As I said multiple times before, this war is now expanding beyond the scope of Ukraine. There's attacks happening on Russian territory. We've had involvement over recent months by Moldova, specifically Transnistria, that breakaway region there in Moldova. We have the involvement of Lithuania with the situation between them and Kaliningrad, that Russian exclave there in Europe. So arguably, this conflict is starting to have is starting to reach out, so to speak, to some of these nearby countries here. Of course, Russia was one of the first. Of course, as they are on the offensive here. The Ukrainians are bringing the fight back to them on their own territory, and I believe we have a few reports to bring you tonight on those strikes that are happening on Russian territory, and not just separatist territory here within Ukraine, but we're talking on Russian mainland territory as well. We're going to start tonight, as usual, by going through our primary headlines, and we're going to get everybody caught up. I'll go through the past kind of week of primary headlines first, and then we'll touch on everything that's happened over the course of about the past 12 to 24 hours or so. After that, we'll hop into our community aggregated news and content brought to us by our users over on our Discord server at discord.gg/Nemico. You can check that stuff over on the Situation Room channel in the Discord server. We have a lot of posts and content to bring you guys tonight. So we're going to try to get through as much of that as we possibly can. Of course, after we get through our community aggregated content, we'll switch on over to our live UA map, which you guys see on the screen behind me here. We'll be taking a look at all of the open source reporting for about the past 12 or so hours and get everybody caught up on what's going on right now in Ukraine. Before we start with our primary headlines, if you guys haven't already, please hit that like button. It's the best way to get this information into the hands of more people. Get the news out there. It's important that we inform people of what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in Russia. Again, this has very far-reaching consequences for all of us, even those of us across the pond here in the States, here in the United States. Let me be clear, there are hundreds and thousands of people, I would say thousands of people dying on a weekly basis here in Ukraine. It's a very bloody conflict, and so, of course, people in Ukraine are the most affected here by this conflict, but there are very, as I said, far-reaching consequences here across the globe, trickle-down effect from this conflict happening in Ukraine. You have a food crisis, which is continuing to grow. You have an economic crisis, which is continuing to grow in many countries across the world. Fuel and a growing energy crisis here, which we have been covering over recent months, and that is expected to worsen. There's problems in the automotive industry, etc. We'll go into that in more detail later in tonight's show. But I like to reiterate that every report, that this war is not just affecting people in Ukraine, but it's important for us here in the West, here in the States, here in Canada, Mexico, in Europe, Australia, wherever you're tuning in from. It's important for us to keep up to date on what's going on. It's important for us to be putting the pressure on our local politicians in whatever country we reside in, again, to be sending munitions, to be sending weapons over there to Ukraine, again, to be supporting the fight there, because, again, if it continues to compile and get worse, as it has in recent weeks, it will continue to affect us more and more, and until we eventually have to get more and more involved in the conflict, as we are already starting to see occur here. I'm mainly speaking to those grain exports stuck in those Black Sea ports along Ukraine. We'll talk about that later in tonight's show. Without further ado, we're going to get right into our headlines. Again, just a reminder, hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. The best way to get notified when new streams and new videos go live. I actually did a poll last week asking my viewers how many of you get notified when we put these streams up, when we or put new videos out, and I'll pull that up real quick just to get that percentage. 66% of you said that you have not been getting any notifications from YouTube. That just goes to show how much the mainstream media has really started to kind of brush under the rug this war and the reporting being done around it. Every day I'm seeing less and less reporting here in the States, at least where I'm at, on the mainstream news, on TV. We're seeing less and less information coming out about what's going on in Ukraine. People are losing interest, but we're here to keep you guys informed and bring you guys the updates on what is going on in Ukraine and over there in Europe. Starting with our primary headlines, we're going to go over everything that's happened this week just to get everybody kind of caught up. We'll go over just the primary stuff just to get everybody on the same page. From there, we can then go into more detail, and you guys will kind of be able to understand the bigger picture of what is going on. So on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, actually this is coming up this Tuesday, so hold on, let me scroll back here. All right, so we're going all the way back here to the 4th of July. Okay, I hope everybody, at least here in the States, had a wonderful holiday weekend for the 4th there. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky confirmed that Russia had taken control of Lysychansk. So this was the big story breaking all last week. Severodonetsk officially fell to the Russians. Lysychansk officially fell to the Russian forces. As you can see here on the map behind me, if we go ahead and we'll kind of scroll in there so you guys can see what the territory control is looking like currently. You can see here Severodonetsk on the map and Lysychansk here where my mouse is, of course, have all been consumed by the Russian forces in that region. So again, he had confirmed on the 4th of July, President Vladimir Zelensky, that last city in eastern Luhansk region that had been under Ukrainian control had been taken by Russian forces. He has since then vowed that Ukraine would retake the city in the coming days and weeks. So again, it is officially confirmed now that Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, those very large populated areas, those cities there in the Donbass region, have been taken by Russian forces. Moving on to July 5th, global leaders and international organizations met in Lugano, Switzerland, to chart a way forward in supporting Ukraine's recovery. Build is what they're calling the international kickoff for the recovery process in Ukraine. The meeting adopted principles to aid the country in rebuilding from the war with Russia. Britain will host next year's Ukraine Recovery Conference. Moving on to July 6th, Russia and the U.S. trolled each other over the address of the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. Russian authorities renamed the street as, quote, Donetsk People's Republic Square. The U.S. Embassy responded by displaying geo-coordinates as its address on its homepage, while sticking to the previous Bolshoi Diviansky Pereluk street address on its other web pages. So again, directly firing back there on that Donetsk People's Republic Square. The street that they had renamed there, those Russian authorities had renamed. So kind of some tit for tat, kind of a game of cat and mouse here when it comes to U.S. and Russian geopolitical relations. Moving on to the 7th of July, Ukraine reinstalled the national flag on Snake Island after regaining control of the Black Sea island from Russian forces a few days earlier. Snake Island became a legendary symbol early in the war when Ukrainian troops there reportedly defied a Russian warship's demand to surrender. That same day, Brittany Griner pleaded guilty to drug charges. We've been covering Miss Griner's story here on the show over the past few months here. Again, she pleaded guilty to those drug charges in a Moscow court last Thursday. The U.S. basketball star also wrote a letter to President Biden asking for help. She was arrested in February just as Russia was preparing to invade Ukraine, as we have reported on in earlier nightly reports. The Biden administration says she is wrongfully detained and is working to get her home. Moving on to July 8th, the Biden administration announced a $400 million military aid package for Ukraine, including more of those HIMAR rocket systems, which Ukrainian officials say make a difference on the battlefield. The lightweight HIMARS mount on a truck and can reach targets up to 180 miles away. So a very effective weapon system on the ground in Ukraine being used as we bring you this report. Moving on to July 9th, America's top diplomat told the Chinese counterpart the Biden administration is deeply concerned. Listen to this. Deeply concerned, the Biden administration, the U.S. administration, is deeply concerned about Beijing's alignments with Moscow. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken rejected China's claim that it's neutral over the Russia-Ukraine war and said Beijing's stance further complicates U.S.-Chinese ties. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi blamed the U.S. for the country's tensions and accused it of, quote, China-phobia, as they've been calling it. Moving on to a day later, July 10th, a Russian rocket attack on Sunday, so this was going into yesterday, killed at least 30 people in an apartment in Chasiv Yar, a town in that Donetsk region that we've talked about so very much. It does look like, so in a statement that came from Moscow, I believe, I'm trying to find it here, so it was this was a release from Moscow's Ministry of Defense, if I'm not mistaken. They've claimed that they launched a strike on those soldiers that were, again, raising that flag on Snake Island that we talked about a little bit ago. And apparently they are claiming, allegedly, that they have destroyed some Ukrainian forces that were on the island that were raising that flag. However, that remains unconfirmed at this time, but we do have that statement that came from the Russian, I believe it's the Russian Defense Ministry, shortly after those reports came out of those Ukrainian soldiers raising that flag on Snake Island there. Apparently it was Russian Air Force that carried out those strikes. Again, still waiting to get more concrete information. Some stuff to watch out for coming up this week. On Tuesday, I mentioned this earlier, on Tuesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will attend the opening of a Donetsk embassy in Moscow. So they're opening an embassy to that separatist region of Donetsk in Moscow, representing, again, the Russian-backed, self-proclaimed independent region that is in Ukraine, and other countries have refused to recognize this as a independent country, and of course it is still part of Ukraine, and they refer to it as separatist-held territory, occupied territory. Again, Russia continues to push to capture Donetsk after already taking over the other large part of Ukraine's eastern Donbass region, Luhansk, as we talked about earlier today. Luhansk is under primarily Russian control, and then of course Donetsk is not too far behind, as those cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk have fallen to the Russians. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is scheduled to brief the European Parliament's Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee on Wednesday. We'll be bringing you those reports Wednesday of what those statements are given there at that European Parliament Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee. Again, that's happening Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. WNBA star Brittany Griner. Her next court hearing is set to take place in Moscow on Thursday, so we'll also be bringing you updates on her. On Thursday, she has admitted to bringing cannabis into Russia, the cannabis oil extract that they were talking about there originally, but said she packed in a hurry and did not intend to break the law. So again, I've reiterated that many times, but again, we'll have hopefully more information on the situation there with that WNBA star, Brittany Griner, later this week. Russia may be planning, as we've talked about this many times actually, we've heard many reports of this over the past few months, they may be planning to annex Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine. We've heard rumors of this for a while, but there hasn't been anything really of substance there, as again, if you look on the map here behind me, they have all but lost control over Kharkiv Oblast. They have a little bit of control here past the border. You can see this stripe of red here. But all of this territory shaded in blue is territory that the Ukrainian forces have managed to take back from the Russians in the Kharkiv region. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this. Again, they say that they might be planning, they're looking into planning to annex Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine, going beyond its stated aims of capturing regions such as Luhansk and Donetsk in the east, as we've talked about many times. I would say, not after, but as soon as we see them take control fully over the Donbass region, so that includes the Donetsk and, of course, Luhansk, we'll see them kind of refocus some of those forces onto areas in the north, like Kharkiv, and areas in the south, like Kherson and the southern coast. So we're going to have to keep our eyes peeled on that situation. Ukraine's government asked civilians to evacuate Russian-occupied Kherson, which I just mentioned there, as Ukrainian forces prepared a counterattack there. We've been hearing rumors of this counterattack being planned for a few weeks now, actually. I believe I brought you some news on that a few weeks back. However, they have retaken quite a bit of territory through here, but they have yet to launch a major counteroffensive to retake Kherson or any of this territory in this region here, which you see highlighted by my mouse. But we could expect to see that possibly within the next week or two here. So again, that's another thing we're going to have to keep our eyes on. So again, that kind of gets everybody caught up on what's been going on over the past week or so, and what to look forward to over the news and the reporting that's going to be coming out over the next week or so here. So what we're looking ahead to, and what has happened about over the past 7 days or so. What we're going to do is I'm going to cover all of the individual reports, or the primary headlines, I should say, that have come out today, just to get everybody kind of caught up on what's been going on over the past about 24 to 48 hours. I would say more so the past 12 to 24 hours here. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has asked military chiefs to draw up plans to gather a, quote, million-strong fighting force equipped with Western weapons to recapture its southern territory from Russia, the country's defense minister said. Zelensky has ordered his military to recover occupied areas around the Black Sea coast that are vital to the country's economy. Alosky Reznikov said, again, this was earlier today. Ukraine has warned residents in southern Kherson and Zaporizhia to evacuate. As I just mentioned a minute ago, they are preparing to launch this counteroffensive to take areas there in the south. So that's in the Zaporizhia region and the Kherson region as well. Which have, again, both those regions have been occupied by Russian troops since about late February, after they crossed the bridge again from Russian annexed Crimea. Those forces moved up and took over Zaporizhia and the majority of the Kherson region. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister, Erna Vereshchuk, said it's clear there will be fighting there, will be artillery shelling there, and we therefore urge people to evacuate immediately. Urgently, actually, was the word she used there directly in that quote. Moving on from that, at least 24 people have unfortunately died and dozens more were injured after that Russian missile attack hit a 5-story apartment building in the town of Chasiv Yar in eastern Ukraine. That town has been hit a lot over the past 7 days or so here, but especially in the past 48 to 72 hours, Chasiv Yar has been absolutely hammered. Emergency crews worked to pull people trapped in rubble there. I was looking at footage of that earlier today. Rescues are still combing through that rubble, and 9 people have been rescued. The strike continued and destroyed 3 buildings in a residential quarter of town, inhabited mostly by people who work in nearby factories around Chasiv Yar, around that town there. Zelensky accused Moscow of purposely targeting civilians in Chasiv Yar attack and promised, quote, punishment is inevitable for every Russian murderer. That was his direct quote there from Zelensky earlier today. Serhiy Haidai, Ukraine's governor of Luhansk, has said a, quote, small part of the Luhansk region is still holding on. Fierce battles are going on. So again, a few minutes ago, I guess I kind of made it sound like Luhansk was fully captured, but again, to do the Ukrainians' due diligence here, I guess I should mention, there are a few areas here along, sorry here, let me scroll down, along the eastern border here, along this eastern region here, that are still holding out in that Luhansk region. They're still fighting here, and don't get me wrong. When you see this area completely shaded in red, that doesn't mean that there could be pockets of resistance within some of these areas. I know we've seen guerrilla fighting break out in some of these Russian-controlled areas. We've seen pockets of Ukrainian forces that were cut off and left behind, wage counterattacks in some of these areas. So that's always a possibility. But again, just to reiterate, Serhiy Haidai, again, the governor of Luhansk, he said a small part of the Luhansk region is still holding on and fierce battles are going on. He accused Russian forces of using new recruits from the occupied areas of Ukraine as, quote, cannon fodder, which we have talked about since the beginning of this war. That's been something that I've been covering for a while now, and kind of reiterating to you guys here is how, again, especially early on, a lot of the forces that went into the battlefield, went into the war zone here in Ukraine, were mainly coming from separatist regions like Donetsk and Luhansk, Crimea, of course. A lot of those soldiers that were heading to the front lines first were, again, a lot of them came from separatist territory. There were conscripts and stuff that came from separatist territory, and were, basically given old Soviet gear, old Soviet vehicles, old Soviet equipment, and then just expected to go into combat, basically used as cannon fodder. He even said there in his quote, they're guaranteed to not survive even the first battle, as he claimed there, as he said there. So yeah, a very dire situation there occurring in the east of the country. Again, as on both sides, many fighters are dying, both on the Russian side and the Ukrainian side. And again, a lot of these Russian fighters, I'd like to reiterate, a lot of them don't want to be there, especially those fighters coming from those separatist regions there. Some of them were drafted up. A lot of them are reservists. A lot of them are conscripts, as I said, and were basically shoved onto the front lines and are basically being sent to their deaths. We've covered this and shown evidence of this many times over the past about 5 months. Again, it's mind-boggling to think that we are over the 5-month mark now that this war has been going on. 138 days. Every time I say that, it absolutely it makes my head spin, thinking just how long this very bloody conflict has been allowed to continue. Russia has claimed in the last 24 hours to have killed over 500 500 Ukrainian troops and to have destroyed large amounts of foreign supplied weaponry and ammunition. Again, these are reports coming from Russia, coming from the Russian government, so you can take that with a grain of salt. But they claim, again, in just the last 24 hours from when we are talking now, to have killed over 500 Ukrainian troops, and again, to have destroyed large amounts of foreign supplied weaponry and ammunition, including ammunition depots for HIMARS, multiple launch rocket systems, M777 howitzers, and of course, the two S7 Pion self-propelled guns supplied by the United States to Ukraine. Now, that doesn't go without saying that the Ukrainians have been absolutely hammering Russian ammo depots. Russian ammunition and weapons depots have been the primary target by these Ukrainian forces, and we're talking reaching right onto Russian territory. So not even on Ukrainian territory, but we're talking moving right onto some of these areas here along the border here with Ukraine. Again, weapons depots, ammo depots. We've showed videos of these getting hit and getting struck countless. Every week, we're hearing of ammo depot after ammo depot after ammo depot, which is being struck by these short and long range missile systems that Ukraine is employing here on Russian territory. Catlinberg, thank you so much for the support. Says welcome back, Nem. Thank you, Catlinberg, and welcome back to everybody that is tuning in tonight. We're just going through our primary headlines here. The UK's Ministry of Defense suggests that neither side has made any territorial gains in Ukraine over the weekend. Okay, so over the past about 72 hours or so, there's basically been just a tit for tat. Again, kind of a game of cat and mouse here, as the Russians look to push forward, but the Ukrainians push them back, and then just this cycle keeps repeating. It's been kind of a stalemate over the weekend. In the latest briefing, Russian artillery, they state again that Russian artillery bombardments continued in northern Donbass sector, but probably without any major territorial advances. Ukrainian forces continued to apply localized pressure to the Russian defensive line in northeast Kherson Oblast, and also probably without achieving territorial gains. So again, I talked about that just a minute ago. This is where, down here in Kherson, this is where they're looking to perform that counterattack. They have managed to take back this territory here, but since then, it's been basically a stalemate here, as these front lines have really been drawn on the map. And again, you can kind of see the same thing occurring here in the east of the country, right down this line. The movement forward of the Russian forces and the movement eastward of Ukrainians as they try to take back territory has slowed a lot over the past 72 hours going into the past 7 days, but it doesn't mean that the fighting has lessened. In fact, I believe the artillery, the amount of artillery being used, the amount of bombardments occurring on both sides is just as high, if not higher, than we've seen it up to this point. All right, so moving on from that, Ukraine's heavy artillery. We've talked about how many weapon systems they have in country, how much munition they have, and the fact that that munition is running out and that they need more. Ukraine's, in a report from earlier today, Ukraine's heavy artillery is outnumbered roughly 8-1 by Russian guns. So I've talked about that many times before. In fact, in one of my reports from earlier this month, actually it might have been back in June, I talked about how some of the Ukrainian artillerymen on the ground were saying things like, we fire one shell and the Russians will fire 10 or 20 back at us. They're just absolutely throwing everything at these Ukrainian forces. However, we've noticed the Ukrainian artillery fire, for the most part, their bombardments have been very precise, very calculated. Of course, we've seen a lot of evidence of them using things like drones and stuff for spotting. Again, they have less munitions, so they need to use them. They need to be smarter about how they use them. Where the Russians, they have very large stockpiles, which arguably they're beginning to burn through at a very rapid rate, but they're just throwing everything they got back at these at these Ukrainian forces. Now, I think it might have a lot to do with Ukrainian counter-artillery radar systems. Again, they can see where those Russians are firing from. They can fire back. That combined with things like spotters and drones being used for spotting, it makes their return fire, very accurate. They know where the Russian artillery batteries are or where they're set up, and they can fire directly on them. Again, I think it has a lot to do with just, they have a lack of supply in most areas under the Ukrainian forces. So, they have a mentality of, each shell has to count. All right, each shell has to land on target. They can't afford not to. And again, we've seen a lot of evidence of that over the recent weeks and months here. Latest Ukrainian briefings state Russian artillery bombardments continue in northern Donbass sector. Again, as I talked about a minute ago. Again, mainly in northern Donbass is where we've seen just the height of that, where we've seen the most of those shellings occur. Again, in that region, the Ukrainian forces, their artillery systems there, are outnumbered roughly 8-1 by the Russian guns that are on the direct opposite side of the front line. Again, that puts Ukrainian forces at a significant advantage. Again, that came directly from a spokesperson from Ukraine's International Legion. I believe Damian Magru, I believe, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I believe is the name there. Again, he's a spokesman for the unit comprising foreign nationals, told a briefing in Kiev that more arms from Ukraine's Western partners were needed to close the gap. So again, they are urging countries to send more weapons, more munitions into Ukraine, into the combat theater. The Russian president, Vladimir Putin, has signed a decree making it easier for citizens of Ukraine to acquire Russian citizenship. A document published on the Russian government's website shows Putin has signed a decree extending a simplified Russian naturalization process, as he's calling it, to all citizens of Ukraine. Previously, a simplified procedure for acquiring Russian citizenship applied only to residents of the self-proclaimed breakaway territories of the Donetsk People's Republic, also known as the DPR, they're abbreviated, and Luhansk People's Republic, also abbreviated as the LPR, in eastern Ukraine, as well as the Russian-occupied regions of Kherson and Zaporizhia. Again, talking about Lithuania, we talked about this earlier in the show when I talked about the main headlines. When I went over kind of what's been going on, the main headlines over the past weeks or so, we talked about the situation with Lithuania and Kaliningrad, that Russian exclave there. Lithuania has now expanded restrictions on trade through its territory to Russia's Kaliningrad exclave as phase-ins on earlier announced European Union sanctions begin. Goods sanctioned from Monday morning include concrete, wood, alcohol, which is a really big one for the Russians, and alcohol-based industrial chemicals, all being cut off from that Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. The governor of Kaliningrad, Anton Alikhanov, has proposed a total ban of movement of goods between the three Baltic states and Russia in response to authorities in the exclave have called, quote, a blockade. So Kaliningrad, that Russian exclave there, the government there, basically the Russian government, is saying, hey, this is basically a blockade, and they're calling for a comprehensive ban on the movement of goods between the Baltic states and Russia. Russian gas giant Gazprom, and in some energy news here, will begin 10 days of routine maintenance on its Nord Stream 1 pipeline today, as Europe waits to see if gas comes back on. The annual work on the two pipelines was scheduled long in advance. However, many fear Gazprom might take the opportunity to simply shut off the valves. I know there's been a lot of headlines this week talking about the possibility that Russia might fully shut off all gas flowing into Europe in whatever way possible. I know they've shut off the flow of fuel to many countries in and around Europe. However, a total and a comprehensive cease in the flow of that Russian fuel would have drastic consequences here. We're going to have to keep an eye on that situation closely. Again, Many fear that Gazprom might take this opportunity to just simply shut off the valves and not turn that energy flow back on again, basically using the flow of that gas as a weapon. 2 Ukrainian civilians were killed and at least 2 others injured in Russian missile attacks on the town of Siversk near Severodonetsk, officials said. Donetsk Governor Pavlo Krylenko said 3 people were hurt by shelling in Soledar and 7 houses and other property burned down in Bakhmut, with no details of any casualties. Ukraine officials warned last week the city in Luhansk region was facing a, quote, humanitarian disaster. The number of Ukrainian children enrolled in Poland's school is expected to double to at least 400,000 in the coming school year. The country's education department has said, again, the report in European Pravda, an online media outlet published by Ukrainian journalists, quoted, I believe it's pronounced Przemysław Kaznarnik, again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Poland's education minister, as saying those enrolled would take part in lessons both online from Ukraine and in person. So again, Ukrainian children enrolled in Polish schools is expected to double to at least 400,000 students in Polish schools, as a lot of people have fled Ukraine to Poland. Germany has reportedly blocked $9 billion of European Union aid to Ukraine for more than a month. The Kiev Independent, citing the Italian newspaper Corriere della Sera, said Germany's finance minister, Christian Lindner, was against the planned aid because of concerns over European debt. Russian Tennis Federation has claimed Elena Rybakina as, quote, our product on her return to the women's title at Wimbledon. They praised her training program in the country after she became Wimbledon champion on Saturday while representing Kazakhstan. I know we've covered kind of the situation here in Russian sports here and Russian-European sport relations here for quite some time. Russia has restricted access to the website of Germany's Die Welt newspaper. Reuters reports this came at the request of prosecutors, according to Roskomnadzor. Again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That is a mouthful there. Russia's communications regulator. It was not immediately clear why prosecutors asked for the restriction, but again, it's pretty clear there. Again, many journalist outlets have been restricted within Russia, and I expect we'll see more in the coming weeks and months. A Scottish council, to end our main reports here, we have a report here coming from earlier today saying, again, a Scottish council has announced plans to bring up to 200 empty homes back into use to house refugees fleeing Ukraine. North Lancashire Council said it would use £5 million of Scottish government funding to reinstate the homes in high-rise towers in Coatbridge and Wishaw to a high standard, according to a report from PA Media. So again, Scotland looking to help out there, house some of these Ukrainian refugees that have fled to other countries in Europe. We're now going to switch over to our community aggregated reporting. And we're going to take a look at all of our, again, community aggregated content coming at us from the Situation Room over on the Discord server. That's discord.gg/Nemico. You can find an invite link to that in the description below. Our first post here comes from Rot Lady on the Discord here. Again, this post we covered earlier in the evening, but I'll read you a little bit. Again, it talks about Ukraine's aims to amass a 1 million-strong army to fight Russia, says the defense minister. Again, they say here, however, the comments by the defense minister, Oleksiy Reznikov, are being seen as more of a rallying cry than a concrete plan for a counter-offensive. They come as Russia makes gains in the eastern Donbass region and continues to pound areas across Ukraine. Again, we'll have to keep our eyes on this going forward. He says here, actually at the bottom, we have approximately 700 700,000 in the armed forces, and when you add the National Guard, police, border guard, we are around 1 million strong. So again, they're looking to amass a force about 1 million strong here to launch counteroffensives in Ukraine and to take back a lot of that territory. We have our next post here coming at us from Unstinkable on the Discord server. This talks about an alleged ammo depot bombed at around 2200 hours local time, speculated HIMARS strike. In fact, we actually have some videos here. Again, this is coming from live UA map. So this is in Nova Hakova. Again, you can see those strikes occurring there. Again, more proof of strikes here on ammo depots. So I have another. I actually have another video of that I want to show you. So this talks about, again, sources report that around the time of the strike, there was a large fleet of Russian vehicles in Nova Hakova at the base, including many fuel trucks, at least 50 units. In addition to the presence of more than 200 missiles for the Smerch MLRS were visually confirmed. I have another tweet here that has a video that I wanted to show you. We should be able to find it here. Go away, Twitter. Okay, so I know it was posted here within the past about 12 hours or so here, so we should be able to find it. If not, I might have to bring it up another way. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is, I believe, this is actually coming from July 9th, so this might be a different depot being hit here. I'm going to try to get this up on the screen here for you guys. So that's definitely the video there. So here's another, I believe this is another video here. Yeah, this is that video. Okay, so this is a video of the strike here. It's coming from Reddit instead of Twitter here, but nonetheless it'll work. I'll get some audio going for you guys here so you can hear. So you can see a very large explosion happening there. What is believed to be a Russian ammo depot there. Some absolute devastation there on that Russian ammo depot. Again, thank you to Unstinkable for sending that over. Our next post comes from Tiger Eye 912. It's a video on YouTube by War Lies Busters. This is, I believe, Donetsk, I believe, if I'm not mistaken here. It says, when it's 6 a.m. and your ammunition storage was destroyed, but you saved your favorite weapon box. Let's see, I believe that's a Russian soldier there carrying, looks to be an ammunition crate somewhere. Looks like he is having a good time. Our next post here comes from Kayuka. He talks about more than 150 dead, including 5 officers. A source about the details of the missile attack of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Kherson region. So again, a translation here. I have an article in. I believe this is Ukrainian, if not. Yeah, it's a Ukrainian source here. But I can go ahead and read this for you. It says, information continues to be received about about the killed and wounded servicemen of the Russian army as a result of the missile strikes of the armed forces of Ukraine in southern Ukraine. The units of the armed forces of Ukraine continue to actively destroy the command posts and warehouses of the Russian army on the territory of Ukraine, which is occupied by the death of a large again, this accompanied. Sorry, so this is a little bit of a rough translation here. Which is accompanied by the death of a large number of manpower and officers of the Russian forces. Thus, over the past few days alone, as a result of artillery strikes by the Ukrainian army in the Kherson region, more than 4 warehouses and 3 command posts of the division were leveled and above were destroyed. Oh, posts of the division level and above were destroyed. I see what they're saying there. So, again, a lot of Russian targets there have been destroyed in Kherson, according to this post here from this Ukrainian media outlet. This actually came from Chief of Staff of the 22nd Army Corps Military Unit 73954 from Simferopol, Major General Nasibulin, commander of the 20th Motorized Rifle Division. Actually, so no, this is a list of the dead officers here, of the dead Russian officers. Again, it says here, according to the information received, among other things, the death of a large number of Russian military officers from the Senior Officer Corps is confirmed. And then they start listing some of the names of some of those killed officers here. Very interesting report. Again, thank you to Kayuka for sending that over. Our next post here comes from Pyrotech. Thank you, Pyrotech, for sending this over. That comes from Kiev Post on Twitter, a confirmed Twitter source here. Ukraine's President Zelensky awarded Preminsky, a city close to the Polish-Ukrainian border, the honorary Rescue City badge. Since February 24th, this city has made an immense contribution to rescuing people fleeing Ukraine, serving as a humanitarian hub for all. Again, and there's a pic of that city there below. Pyrotech, thank you so much for posting that. We have another post here coming from Kayuka. This comes from Visegrad24, an unverified source on Twitter. It talks about, according to rumors swirling around the circles of military experts in Poland, Warsaw will soon donate another 232 PT-91 Twardy tanks to Kiev. It's even more modernized version of the T-72. In exchange, Poland will get 300 used Abrams tanks from the United States of America. Again, we've talked about this many times. A lot of these countries are giving their older gear or less capable gear to Ukraine, with the promise that the U.S. will then send them some used vehicles, used gear in return. So again, a little bit of geopolitical, deal making, I should say, on part of the U.S. Again, as they look to provide more aid to those Ukrainian forces on the ground. Our last post here tonight again comes from Pyrotech. Again, thank you so much for sending this over. This comes from OSINT Technical on Twitter. It shows the Ukrainian Operational Command South released a video of a Neptune ASM hitting the Tarvida oil rig. Again, which we reported on last week, if I'm not mistaken. You can see this Neptune anti-ship missile. Like there, and that is it right there, striking that oil rig. And actually, there's a clear video of the strike. There's a clear video of the strike down here, so I'm going to show you that. So you guys can see. You can see the oil rig there. You can see the anti-ship missile inbound. And it takes out that Russian oil rig there again on the Black Sea. Thank you to everybody that posted in the Situation Room today. We weren't able to go through everybody's posts, but if you'd like to read through those, it's probably one of the best resources of up-to-date information on what's going on in Ukraine. Situation Room over there on the Discord server, discord.gg Nemico. Those are community aggregated reports. So those are just people, they come across a report, they come across a piece of intel or a thread that may interest us and may be worthy to show here on the show. They post it over there in the Situation Room for everybody to see there. It's a very valuable resource, being able to share that information and have kind of a vetted and a safe environment over there on the Discord server to be able to share these reports and share these information and be able to bring them to you guys here on the show. Doompie coming at us with tonight's weather report over here in the live chat. Doompie, thank you so much for coming in clutch as usual with our weather forecast. Kiev, 0500, 15 degrees C, mostly cloudy, northwest, 12 kilometers an hour, sunrise at 0448, sunset 2108. Thank you so much, Doompie, for letting us know what the weather's looking like over there in Ukraine. A little cloudy, mostly cloudy this morning today. We'll have to see again if that has any effect on the Russian forces' activities, as it sometimes does. The weather, of course, is kind of a valuable resource to the Ukrainians, because when the weather is not doing so good, usually the invading Russians, aren't doing so good either. So, as especially was the case earlier in the war, in the early days of the war, when the ground is very highly saturated with moisture over there, and those Russian armored columns were having a pretty hard time maneuvering. OG Smiley69 says, Nemico Network, did you get the clip I sent to you on Discord? I will take a look at that, OG Smiley69. If it's worth a show, I'll show it on tomorrow's report. But for now, we're going to get on over to our live UA map, and we're going to go through our open source reports. I want to get you guys caught up on all of the individual things that have been happening for about the past 12 hours or so. So this is a really valuable resource here, being able to see really what's going on the ground. I know we sporadically cover this topic and that topic and etc., but being able to see things chronologically in order here on this map screen and be able to show kind of the territorial control gives a really good understanding of what's going on. Miss Chris 620 asks, how's Mehmet? I actually haven't talked to Mehmet in a little while, but I do plan to touch base with him soon, and we'll get some updates for you guys on how he's doing. Pretty sure he's still in Kiev, if I'm not mistaken. However, I'll have to get an update for him on that, and maybe we'll possibly have him back on the show soon. Starting here at around, actually, hold up here. We got, so it looks here like some of our red alert sirens came in here at the last minute over the past few hours here. We'll cover those towards the end, but you do see here we have one coming out of Kharkiv and Kharkivska Oblast and Donetsk Oblast as well. Both red alert aerial threat sirens sounding. Starting here at 11 hours ago, President Zelensky met with the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte in Kiev. You can see there a picture of their hearty handshake there. Yeah, absolutely, 100% hearty handshake. That's a hell of a handshake right there. You can see Zelensky really giving him the good squeeze there. If there's a hell of a handshake, that's a good handshake right there. You can see them talking business here at a table here. I believe, again, this was in Kiev, so this might have been in one of the presidential office buildings. I'm unsure, though. Again, you can see some other pictures there of those talks that occurred there, again, between Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte and President Zelensky in Ukraine. Again, 11 hours ago, Ukrainian Operational Command South released a video of that Neptune ASM, which we just showed you guys just a minute ago here. Again, that happened. Apparently, that occurred here on the Black Sea, Dniester estuary. I'm not sure if it's actually if that's the location of that oil rig. I thought originally that it was actually out here. But I could be wrong on that. If somebody maybe wants to send me a little information, I can get some clarification on that. But we saw that video there of that anti-ship missile striking that Russian oil rig. 10 hours ago, 7 houses were unfortunately damaged as a result of shelling in Maryansk. You can see where that was located there, not too far from territory that actually in territory that the Ukrainians have taken back from the Russians. 10 hours ago, death toll of Russian shelling in Chesiv Yar, which we talked about earlier on this show, has been very heavily bombarded over the past 72 hours or so, going into the past 7 days. On Sunday, increased to 30 dead and 9 wounded Okay, so 30 people have lost their lives. 9 people are wounded there in Chasiv Yar after those strikes have occurred. 10 hours ago, 2 killed as a result of shelling in Zolochiv. That's the Kharkiv region. You can see a picture here of absolute, utter destruction of what looks to be a residential target. Again, it's hard to tell here. This does look like a house. It looks like a residential house of some sort, possibly a farm building, maybe. It's hard to tell. Again, you can see some burnt out buildings there and what looks to be just a lot of destroyed infrastructure here. Again, more evidence that Russians are indiscriminately shelling some of these locations, a lot of times hitting residential targets. 10 hours ago, explosions were reported near Kherson airfield. That happened 10 hours ago. I believe some strikes occurred there. I'm pretty sure those were Ukrainian-launched strikes onto Russian-held territory, as the Russians are most likely using that airport at this time. Ten hours ago, European Commissioner for Home Affairs says we have indications of smuggling Western weapons supplied to Ukraine. So again, they're saying here, again, the European Commissioner for Home Affairs is saying we have indications of smuggling Western weapons supplied to Ukraine. So again, not sure if those are being smuggled out of the country. I'm going to have to wait to get some more information on that. 9 hours ago here, Ukraine warns of a new wave of cyber attacks. So again, this is coming from a cyber authority there in Ukraine. Again, the warning of a new wave of cyber attacks using compromised government emails. So compromised Ukrainian government emails being used to launch this new wave of cyber attacks here that is occurring within Ukraine. 9 hours ago, Erdogan had a phone call with Zelensky about, quote, the grain corridor, which we've talked many times about on the show over recent weeks. That grain is stuck in Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea, and it arguably needs to get moving really quickly. I've talked about this many times with you guys, and I'll mention it again. 12% of your daily caloric intake, yes, I'm talking to all of you guys watching the stream right now. Again, to all of you guys that are tuning in and watching, 12% of your daily calories is stuck in the port in Ukraine. All right, of course, unless you're growing all of your food in your front yard, your home garden. The reason your grocery store prices are arguably increased, if not slightly, a lot in some areas, and some areas have been hit harder than others. It's because that 12% of your daily calories is stuck in those ports in Ukraine. Now, of course, this has effects on us here in the States, here in the West, here in Europe, etc. But it has much greater consequences for people in already food starved countries. Okay, we're talking places like Africa, the Middle East, countries in those regions that, again, highly depended on those grain exports. Not to mention, there's a lot of humanitarian organizations that bring food to poverty-stricken areas in Africa and the Middle East, and a lot of those humanitarian organizations relied on that grain and that food coming from those Ukrainian ports. They're not able to get that food, so they're not able to, bring people aid. And so again, there are people starving as a direct consequence of what is going on in Ukraine right now, and that condition, the situation is expected to get increasingly worse in the coming weeks. Not the coming months, but in coming weeks, it's expected to compile and to get arguably worse. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. Not to mention, you guys. Prices on fuel are up as well. So fuel prices, energy prices increase, and thus it costs more for us to transport these goods. Thus, it costs more for your food. Okay, so you have not only the fact that 12% of your daily caloric intake is stuck in Ukraine, but you also have the other side of the spectrum where the food we do have here it costs more to get to your shelves on your grocery store because the fuel prices are higher. 9 hours ago, explosions were reported in Odessa, and an aerial threat sounded in that area there, in that city of Odessa. 9 hours ago, Ukrainian tycoon Renat Akhmetov and his company, SCM, announced they're handing over all media assets to the state property to compel with a law on oligarchs. Very interesting report coming there. I believe, again, it's a Ukrainian tycoon, Renat Akhmetov. Again, the company SCM, again, handing over all media assets to the state property to compel with a law on oligarchs. So that's very interesting development there. 9 hours ago, smoke rising in Odessa region after that reported missile hit that we reported on earlier. 9 hours ago, Ministry of Foreign Affairs summoned Charge d'Affaires of Canada to discuss decision to hand over Siemens turbine of Nord Stream pipeline. So it's very interesting there as well. We're going to have to keep an eye on that situation. Now we know that the Russians are looking to shut down, I believe it's one of those Nord Stream pipelines this week. Again, for the next 10 days, there's concerns that they might keep that fuel shut off. We're going to have to wait to see what developments come of that as well. 9 hours ago, the Russian Ka-52 helicopters conducted airstrikes near Libazi, Verkini, Saltiv, and Prodyanka, reports of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. I'll show you on the map here where those locations occurred, where these strikes occurred. You can see here along that eastern front line there, north and eastern, so north of Kharkiv and east of Kharkiv as well. Again, those were carried out by Russian Ka-52 helicopters who conducted those airstrikes on targets in those areas. 8 hours ago, President Zelensky proposed a draft law to Ukrainian parliament for social rights for citizens Poland, granting special status for them. So again, it's a drafted law for Ukrainian parliament, again on social rights for citizens of Poland, granting special status for them. Okay. So again, we'll have to keep an eye on some of these law changes here, which are going forward in Ukraine. 7 hours ago, Russian flag Soromovsky 48 carrying 3,000 tons of corn from occupied Kerch enters the port of Karusa with no AIS. A vessel went dark from tracking 3 days ago with false destination. Izmir. So again, you can see that grain shipment there on screen. Here is a video again of those explosions which occurred about 5 hours ago in Nova Kharkova, that is on Russian occupied territory.
Это завод. Смотрите.
Again, you can see the explosions happening there at what is believed to be a Russian ammo depot that was struck there in Nova Kharkova. 5 hours ago, and more videos of those strikes I could show you here.
Ебать, я все вижу. Ебать, смотри. Ебать! Я заснял это. Все, это пизда. Дебил, ракета летит. Ебать. Ебать! Ебать.
That is a absolutely massive explosion. The other videos did this explosion no justice, but this video here really shows just the scale of this ammo depot explosion. You guys, you can actually see a lake when it gets really bright. You can see a lake here. I believe that's a body of water we're seeing right there. And I mean, it took so long for that shockwave to reach them, which means, I mean, just the size of this explosion here. It's almost unimaginable. And you can see how much debris and munitions are dispersed into the air there. So you can see all of that debris flying through the air. You can see a massive mushroom cloud rising over the territory there. And consequent explosions happening afterwards as well. That's a huge strike on a Ukrainian ammo depot, again, in Nova Kharkova, or Kharkovka. Again, I'm having a hard time pronouncing that one. That one's a mouthful. 5 hours ago, clashes in Luhansk region ongoing near Bilohorivka and Verino Kamienka. Again, you can see where those are located there. Talked about this earlier, that there are still some pockets in that region that are holding out along that eastern kind of front there in Luhansk. 5 hours ago, Jake Sullivan with some news says U.S. has intelligence that Iran is preparing to provide Russia with UAVs to use in Ukraine and is preparing to train the Russians on how to use them. What does that sound like, you guys? What does that sound How does that sound familiar to you? It's because that's the exact type of wording that the U.S. has used when providing artillery systems to the Ukraine. Exact wording. They say, we're going to provide them these systems and we're going to train them on it. And what's going on? And we're seeing the same exact moves here being made between Iran and Russia. Very interesting. Is it publicity? I would say a lot of it's probably propaganda and publicity, but I wouldn't put it past them actually sending UAVs and training personnel on how to use them. The question is, will they work? Will they be effective on the ground in Ukraine? That's a whole different ball game. 4 hours ago, body of 9-year-old child extracted from the rubble of a building destroyed in Russian shelling in Chasiv Yar of Donetsk region. The death toll has been increased there to 33 bodies. 33 human beings have lost their lives in Chasiv Yar, and 9 were rescued alive. I believe they are considered wounded, though, at this time. I believe because our wounded count was about 9 when I last checked. Finishing up tonight's open source reporting here, it shows firms. This is a NASA firms map is showing fires at Novokhovka. So that's how we have concrete evidence there of these strikes at that ammo depot. It's because we can go on to firms and we can look at those fires being detected by those satellites, by those NASA satellites. So you can see that there. I believe this is a picture from a few days earlier, if I'm not mistaken. And then you can see the fires there on that Russian ammo depot again, which occurred about 5 to 6 hours ago in Novokhovka. We'll now end off tonight's show with a little bit of a Q&A session. If you haven't already, hit that like button. It's the best way to get this information into the hands of more people. And then after you're done doing that, sound off in the chat where you're tuning in from tonight and what fuel and food prices are looking like in your area. We're mainly concerned about fuel, what it's looking like per U.S. gallon, preferably in U.S. dollars if you can do the conversion on that, because that'll make it easier for us to wrap our heads around here. But not just that, what is food looking like in your area? Do you guys have any food shortages? Do you guys have any shortages of any types of supplies? Are prices increased? Let us know where you're tuning in from, what things are looking like in your neck of the woods, and we'll go ahead and we'll read off some of that from the live chats, both on YouTube and Twitch. And also I'm taking messages from Discord general chat as well. TNT Gonblow says, Iran was in on this from the start. I would argue that you are right, TNT Gonblow. They definitely have been just waiting for an opportunity to piss off the U.S. and to aid Russia in some way. And I guarantee that, this is as much a publicity move as it is direct support for Russia. With, again, in regards to the UAVs that I was just mentioning. Kallenberg says, I wonder if it's hard to find guards for ammo depots now. I would imagine there's probably some hesitancy among some of those Russian forces. Again, as they probably don't like sitting around a lot of these ammo depots, as they know they're going to be, they could possibly be struck at any moment. Faraz Khan, thank you so much for tuning in. Says $5 USD a gallon there. Basically about the same where we're at as well. OG Smiley 69 says in Michigan gas is about $4.79 a gallon, so that still sounds pretty high. Faraz actually adds that food is expensive, doesn't give an exact price. He says prices have definitely gone up though. I think I could agree with you there. In my neck of the woods, our food prices and our fuel prices have gone up severely. Even since the beginning of July, over the past 11 days, I've seen increases on certain items. Fuel, fuel has been fluctuating. We saw a down. So at the start of the war, fuel went up. And then we saw a little bit of a adjustment as it kind of creeped back down, but then it went up again. And I think we're in our second adjustment now. I think it's going back down. Remains to be seen if it's going to go back up again. Miss Chris 620 says Western Massachusetts fuel went down to $4.51. Food prices are gross. Frowny face. So again, I've recognized that same pattern. Is that, as I said, we're kind of in an adjustment when it comes to fuel prices. They've gone a little bit down, but mostly are still pretty high. But that food prices have kind of continued to have a steady increase in price. Bob Ross reports $5.70 for diesel where he's located. Catlinburg says Laguna Niguel, California here. Regular is $5.89. No shortages, though. Beef prices are up. Michelle Welch, tuning in from Missouri, says $4.52 a gallon. Food too high, says Michelle. I agree. The food prices are getting pretty high. Again, just here in the States. And you have to understand, if us Americans think that food and fuel prices are bad, try going over to almost anywhere in Europe right now. Okay, a lot of countries have it a lot worse off, but you can tell it's getting bad when us, all the way across the pond, are feeling these far-reaching consequences from this war continuing on. Speedy Squirrel, thank you so much for tuning in today. Says fuel is $4.66 a gallon for a month of July, increase of 19% since last month. So yeah, definitely an increase there. Annette, thank you so much for tuning in. Tuning in from Maine tonight, says gas is about $4.99 a gallon in Maine, so that's pretty consistent with what I've seen. Mike Barry says $4.30 a gallon. East Tennessee food prices are stable, says Mike, in Tennessee. Alan Ellison says paid $4.34 a gallon at Costco near Minneapolis, lowest in a while. So yeah, I have noticed, they have downticked a little bit. We do have a little bit of an adjustment, I think, happening right now with those fuel prices. Mythical, tuning in from Georgia, says $4.38 a gallon. Barbara Brownell says, tuning in from San Antonio, $3.88 per gallon. Mother Saki says, Surprise, Arizona, U.S. $4.59 a gallon retail, $5.29 a gallon. So everybody, I think, for the most part, your guys' fuel prices hovering around the $4 to $5 mark for the most part, unless you're out in California, of course, or in Europe. I would imagine it'd be considerably higher. In fact, speaking of which, we got somebody here from New Zealand, T&SNZ, reports $7.81 US dollars a gallon there in New Zealand. So that's considerably higher versus Armory Knight tuning in from Alabama with $3.92 fuel prices. So that is considerably higher. Rankin from Britain says $8.60 a gallon, but that's in pounds. I'm not sure if that's a U.S. conversion or not. Still sounds pretty high. Utkin with an excellent question here says, Nemico Network, do you think Venezuela might play an increasing role as fuel becomes an issue? Well, see, if I'm not mistaken, the Venezuelan government is highly aligned with the Russians. I could be mistaken on that. I'm not a geopolitical expert here, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Venezuelans are pretty close to the Russians, pretty friendly with the Russians, so to speak. That remains to be seen. There's been talk earlier in the war. Russia talked about putting forces in Venezuela, kind of as just like a political piece of propaganda. I'm not sure if they will do that. It'll be like basically a second Cuban Missile Crisis. Venezuela has played a role in the war. Now, as for energy and fuel, that remains to be seen. We're going to have to keep an eye on that as things continue to develop. Miss Tiger Eye 912, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. She says, passed my exam, officially a certified family nurse practitioner. Your thoughts? Well, hope you are well. We have missed you very much. Thoughts on Kherson? Well, Miss Tiger Eye, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, first of all, and congratulations on passing your exam and becoming a certified family nurse practitioner. I hope you have a wonderful time on your first days on the job, if you haven't had them yet. As for my thoughts on Kherson, I expect there to be a large counteroffensive occurring there in the coming days and weeks. It remains to be seen if that is successful or not, and we're going to have to keep our eyes peeled on the situation there in the south. Epimoo, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. As always, great to have our Scotsman tuning into the live stream. Says, I haven't noticed any shortages, but prices and ingredients such as palm oil and such have been added to a lot of products that had removed it. So prices and ingredients such as palm oil, such as being added to a lot of products that had removed it. So you mean they've added palm oil to some products? Because so one of the big things with Ukrainian exports is sunflower oil. Okay, sunflower is a huge one coming out of Ukraine. More specifically, sunflower oil, which is used in a lot of recipes. So it could be that they're possibly looking to substitute sunflower oil with palm oil now. That could be what we're looking at there. Miss Chris 620 says $7.99 for a container of pickles. Pickles, she says. That is pretty outrageous. I hope those pickle prices come down for you, Miss Chris 620. Doom Pie says, if I'm right, $9.72 a gallon in the Netherlands right now. Well, thank you, Doom Pie, for doing that conversion there. That is pretty insanely high for fuel prices. Hammer Jam says the same bag of vegetables I bought in February for $8 is now $12. So I could say, I think, beyond a short of a doubt, that we are all feeling these food prices. Okay, these food price increases. And again, I like to reiterate that there are people in certain parts of the world that are feeling it a lot more than we are here in the States and in the West. However, I can assure you, some of us here in the States are feeling it pretty hard now. I know people here where I live, that before were barely scraping by, and now with increased prices are having a really hard time. So, again, First Con says on average a 9% increase in food prices here compared to last year. No shortages yet. I've noticed the same. I haven't really noticed too many shortages. However, that could change in the coming weeks and months here as this crisis ensues and gets arguably worse. Again, thank you to everybody that tuned in tonight. Taking some time out of your day to get updated on what's been going on in the Ukrainian war and this ongoing conflict that's happening in Europe, probably the biggest in Europe since World War II, I would argue. Again, to everybody that supported the channel tonight, to everybody that subscribed, to everybody that hit that like button, to everybody that just joined in on the conversation. You guys all deserve a big round of applause because of you guys that this is possible. We'll be back at it again tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with our next Ukraine War Report. We're live every weekday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We took a little break off last week for the July 4th holiday, but we're back now. It looks like we actually just had our air raid alert sirens come through on the live UA map, so I'll actually refresh that real quick just to show you guys. Actually, they disappeared, so maybe have to wait till the next report to go over those. But again, around this time every evening, we get a big round of Ukrainian from municipal data air raid alerts that are coming in different cities and towns in Ukraine. If you guys haven't already, hit that like button. Best way to get this information out into the hands of more people. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Best way to get notified when new streams and videos go live. Speaking of which, right after this live report is done, we'll be uploading this report to YouTube, youtube.com/Nemico Network. So if you missed it, you'll be able to tune in there and watch it as a video. Again, we're live every weekday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Best way to know when we're live is to hit that subscribe button so you get notified, or check back around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as 65% of you reported in a poll last week that you are not getting notified when we go live. So that's an issue. We'll be looking into that in the future here. Again, though, thank you guys that did stop by and that do keep your eyes peeled for those reports. Thank you guys so much for staying vigilant. If you're looking for any of the links to any of our sources or anything at all, you can find it in the description below this video or below this stream, depending on how you're watching it. If you can't find it down there, you can probably find it over on our Discord server. That's discord.gg/Nemico. There's an invite link down there in the description below. And I guess, guys, until next time, this has been your Ukraine War Report for day 138. Again, it gives me chills to actually say that number. Day 138 that we have been dealing with this, and that the people of Ukraine have been dying, and this humanitarian crisis has been growing in Ukraine, and it's 138 days too long. in my opinion. Until next time, guys, you're watching Nemico Network.
Something that will change our daily lives.